Good afternoon. Welcome to the second episode of PAIRfect. Our guest for today is one of the country's most recognizable names in politics and the academe. One might even say he's a bit controversial, no matter what he does and where he goes. Everyone, please welcome former Malacañang spokesperson, former congressman and UP law professor, immediate past president of Asian Society of International Law, attorney Harry Roque.
Hello.
Welcome.
I'm glad to be home here at the Tribune.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm glad you consider it.
My name is Dina and this is
Very
Chito.
Hi, Dina. Hi, Chito.
Actually, the discussion have started na. And,
I know, you missed it eh. Off the camera lahat eh.
Yes. So let's get to it. Let's talk about the most controversial issues of the day.
I'd like to start with a case that you filed with PhilHealth officials.
Yes.
And you did it today?
Yes.
Just this morning.
Just this morning.
morning.
We filed a case for graft and for dereliction of duty against the chief operating officer of PhilHealth and against a senior vice president, Dennis Mas, and I can't remember the name now of the COO, no? And it is because Ken Sarmiento, who used to be head of the PhilHealth liaison office in POEA, reported to the higher ups of PhilHealth the fact that at least 16 million worth of fake receipts have been found. And he felt so frustrated that since 2014, his bosses simply did not do anything to investigate the matter. So after waiting for a very long time in 2018, he finally he got fed up and left PhilHealth. He's of course working now for POEA itself, but he felt disgusted that his bosses did not do anything on his investigation, which included really all the fake receipts that were issued, signed affidavits of liaison officers of money agencies attesting to the fact that they falsified receipts upon instructions of certain individuals, and the fact, of course, that between 2014 and 2018, he already uncovered 16 million worth of fake receipts. So he has speculated that until the time that he discovered this scam, until today, because he left in 2018, that we must have lost already about 100 million pesos at least on the fake receipts. And while we have no evidence of collusion between PhilHealth officials and the money agencies, the fact is PhilHealth officials still, because they knew about it, they were informed by Ken Sarmiento, should have investigated. And the failure to investigate is tantamount to graft because they caused undue injury to the government. We lost 16 million of documented PhilHealth premiums, as well as dereliction of duty, which is failure to initiate criminal investigation upon being informed of the facts. I'm so happy for Ken Sarmiento because he kept his peace since 2018. And kanina talaga, he was almost teary-eyed because finally someone listened and someone actually filed a case on the basis of his investigation. And I think this is one reason why to date we have lost 154 billion pesos to graft and fraud of PhilHealth funds. And of course, I'm concerned because as the primary author of universal health care, PhilHealth is still the implementing agency of universal health care. And the irony of it is for the first year of implementation of universal health care, they say that we are short by 170 billion. And yet, it's also documented that we lost 154 billion to fraud. So if we remove fraud in PhilHealth, we would have more than ample resources to fund universal health care as we envisioned it to be, libreng paggamot at libreng paggamot para sa lahat.
So what kind of changes or actions will follow after this?
Well, you see, the president, when I documented the fraud being perpetrated by PhilHealth, changed the directors and the president. But the reality is you have to change the senior executives because these are the real syndicates. Directors and presidents come and go depending on who the president are, but the fraud's been perpetrated since Kingdom Come by these senior officers.
They're still the same people.
They're still the same people. So I'm happy to say that with this filing this morning, and this is already the second, we would have covered almost all the senior executives who I think are the real members of the syndicate in PhilHealth. And we have a third case, which is forthcoming against, I think, the head of the legal department. And when we investigated PhilHealth in Congress, we already identified that the weakest link as far as corruption is concerned in PhilHealth is the legal department, because under the charter of PhilHealth, it's the legal department that acts as prosecutor, investigator, and judge for fraudulent practices. No? And right now, the Civil Service Commission has come up with a decision that this person, Jojo De Rosario, is not qualified to be head of legal, no, because he lacked the requisite number of years of litigation experience, and that's why we have this mess in PhilHealth.
I know. It's been going on.
In addition
for
to
a while.
corruption, it's simply ineptitude, you know.
How sad.
It started 2014.
Yes, can you imagine? He brought it already to the attention of his superiors. Nothing happened until today.
Wow.
And kanina nga, when we were filing it, we had a complaint consisting of at least 4,000 pages. No? Sabi ko nga, I was so mad because this should have been the job of PhilHealth working with the NBI. But why do we have to do this as author of the law, as a taxpayer? You know? Parang it's not fair that the burden of cleaning up PhilHealth is in the hands of third parties and not within the organization itself. So I'd like to call the leadership now, the new leadership of PhilHealth, please prove your worthiness to occupy your office. No? Start chopping the heads of corrupt people in PhilHealth instead of protecting them. No?
Yes.
Look at the records because they're all there. Alam mo, yung isang susunod na kaso pa namin, ang involved dyan, taguan ng records.
Okay.
Kasi yung mga rank and file naman, gaya ni Ken Sarmiento, no, sila yung nakakadiscover, they document it, tapos itatago ng higher-ups. Maybe in exchange for tongpads, no?
Yeah.
So, please lang po, no, yung bagong presidente ng PhilHealth, yung bagong COO ng PhilHealth, wag naman ho kayo magbulag-bulagan na dyan. At saka nababagalan na po ako mismo, no? Meron naman po akong stake. Ako naman ang gumawa ng batas na yan. Hindi ko po ginawa yung batas na yan para patabain ng mga baboy dyan sa opisina ninyo. So, please lang ho, linisin natin yan ng masiguro natin na makarating sa taong bayan yung benepisyo ng Universal Healthcare Law.
The president must be livid about this
He was.
corruption.
He fired everyone, all the board members and the president. But it's not enough because really the syndicate is in the level of senior executives. Kasi nga, they've been there since time immemorial. No?
Yes.
And maybe the fault of the directors are they don't study enough how the organization works. No? But that's not an excuse. No? But I'm hoping that because the president fired the members of the board and the president, that sends a message to everyone. Kung ikaw ay senior executive, sino ka ba? Kung mga presidential appointees na fa-fire, kayo pa kaya?
The senior executives cannot be terminated or...
Well, it has to be for cause because they have civil service eligibility still, no?
Okay.
But, Sus Marios, if we filed a 4,000-page complaint today, what do you call that if not cause, no? At least for dereliction of duty and for graft, no? For injury to the government, no?
I'm curious, when you mentioned 4,000 pages, I mean, maybe for you that's a normal thing, but for
No, it's not. Even
ordinary
for
folks.
no, even for us. I mean, just the cost of Xeroxing 4,000-page petition is 4,000 pesos. But I think it's even more because we brought it to a commercial copier. Are already huge and normally very. We have a very huge Xerox machine from here to the ceiling. No, it gave up at 11 p.m. last night, so we had to bring it to a commercial photocopier, just to file 9 copies of 4,000 pages each of a complaint. No?
The
Yes.
Xerox machine gave up.
Yes.
So I guess what I'm getting at is what else are you doing right now, like
Well,
other than this PhilHealth,
well, that's a continuing advocacy because it's not enough that we authored the law. We need to ensure its effective implementation. No? But other than that, of course, I've been busy. The president tasked me to file and send to jail the oligarchs behind the water concessions. I've officially finished my study. I've drafted already 2 causes of action against the oligarchs, and I'm just now doing the most serious charge, which is for syndicated estafa. Unfortunately, I need complainants for that because that's the nature of estafa. You need private individuals to complain. So I'm in the process of organizing how to how to have thousands of water subscribers join in the complaint, no? To charge the executives of the water concessionaires with syndicated estafa, which incidentally, as the president knows, is non-bailable because he really wants to see these Castilla Lois behind bar. And me too. Kasi wag naman puro pangit lang ang nakikita natin behind bars gaya ng mga ampatuan, no?
Would that
Magpunta
happen?
naman tayo mga mapuputi, mga mababango doon sa Muntinlupa for the sake also of the other inmates.
Well, I know what you're saying.
Grabe.
Mapuputi at mababango, which is a welcome change for the inmates of Muntinlupa. Yes.
A more ticklish issue is the ABS-CBN franchise. So,
Yes.
you did in your column an analysis, a rundown of the issues.
Understanding the laws behind it, or
Yes.
if it's a legal,
Well,
legal.
we need to be very clear that the co-waranto is completely separate from the issue of renewal of the franchise. The co-waranto seeks to cancel the existing franchise, which only has a life of about a month and 10 days left, no? Whereas the congressional franchise is for another 25 years. Now, of course, because you're talking about suspending an existing franchise of a station with a media outfit, it is my position that it comes to the court with a heavy presumption of unconstitutionality. Why? Because it is tantamount to prior restraint. Because if the petition succeeds, then the franchise will be deemed null and void and they will go off the air. That's, to my mind, really a prior restraint, which is frowned upon and presumed unconstitutional. It's up to the state to prove an overriding state interest. But short of a clear and present danger, I don't think it can be sustained. No? So I have made the opinion that actually the filing of the co-waranto may not succeed. Number one, because of the heavy presumption of unconstitutionality. Number two, because of the doctrine of mootness. It's only 1 month and 10 days left. I don't think the Supreme Court can finish hearing the petition in 1 month and 10 days. So my fairest prediction is the court may simply not issue a decision because it's not enough time. No, the franchise would have expired anyway. Plus, under the Constitution, the renewal of the franchise is really under the jurisdiction of Congress. So the court may exercise judicial prudence, no? Given that it will be moot anyway, the issue of the existing franchise, respect the jurisdiction of Congress, let them decide whether or not a new franchise should be granted. And of course, the relevance of the petition to the extension is that if they can prove that there was really a breach of the existing contract, why should they be entitled to an extension? So, but you see, my views really are, the petition will not succeed because of it is a form of prior restraint and because of mootness. But at the same time, it is only Congress that can decide on the extension, and you cannot allege freedom of speech in broadcast media when you don't have a franchise to broadcast in the first place. Because here, the exercise of freedom of the press is conditioned on your ability to go on the air in the first place, which cannot be without a franchise. Well, of course, any ingenious lawyer for ABS-CBN will say that the totality of circumstances proves to a concerted effort to silence ABS-CBN, no? Pero alam mo kasi malinaw na sa jurisprudence na ang media outlets that are entitled to full protection of the Bill of Rights are print and internet. And that broadcast is a subject to most control by government precisely because the state owns the airwaves, which is the basis for broadcast. No? So, although I am all for freedom of the press and freedom of speech, when a franchise is required, you must have that franchise. And where I disagree with Senate President Tito Soto and Speaker Alan Cayetano, is they talk of a provisional authority issued by the NTC almost as if it's ministerial. It's not. Because broadcast is always a privilege. It is not a right. So you can never assume that the NTC will issue it just because it has happened in the case of Veritas in the past. In Veritas, there was no allegation that they violated their old franchise. In ABS-CBN, there is an allegation that they violated the old franchise. So, of course, if you were NTC, will you not consider the merits of the co-waranto petition? All I'm saying is, bahalang NTC mag-decide dyan on the provision authority, but it is not ministerial. It will still entail the exercise of discretion.
Mm. Speaking of discretion, you have something to say about the Congress moves, actions taken that they have taken towards the granting of renewal of the franchise.
Unfortunately, because of the literal constitutional mandate given to Congress, there's nothing that anyone nor any institution can compel Congress to grant that franchise if it does not want to. And contrary again to some members of the House in saying that there is such a thing as presumption of regularity, a franchise bill, until it becomes a law, has not been approved. And what has not been approved by Congress has, for all intents and purposes, been rejected if, particularly if the franchise is about to end. So what I'm saying is ABS-CBN really needs that franchise. It cannot claim infringement of freedom of the press because in this instance, a franchise is a prerequisite to broadcast. So unless they can convince Congress to give them a franchise, and I think they have done a good job in the Senate, I think they have the numbers in the Senate, but they don't have the numbers in the House, it will be goodbye to Provinciano and to Gardo.
Oh, no.
I know, but that might trigger a popular revolt
Oh,
because
yes.
of Coco Martin's popularity, no?
How about Grace po sponsoring the bill in the Senate?
Well,
Do
you
you
know,
agree with that?
Congress, the power of
Speaking of
Congress is actually plenary. It's not limited. Although the Constitution does speak of a conflict of interest. And that's why I'm surprised that not only has she opted to participate in this query on the alleged violations of the franchise, she's even chair of the committee investigating it. This is an obvious instance of a conflict of interest. Of course, the Constitution does not forbid members of Congress from dealing with matters where they have a conflict, but they have to declare it because they have to more or less inform not only the August Chamber itself, but the people that I'm not objective in this inquiry, that I have a vested interest. So sumunod naman tayo sa sinasabi ng saligang batas. Ano ba ang conflict of interest niya? Yung nanay niya, nagtatrabaho for ABS-CBN. Yung kanyang tatay, yung library ng tatay, kung saan meron siyang kita, ay binili ng ABS-CBN. Oh, that to me smacks of a downright conflict of interest. No? So even if I'm for freedom of the press and freedom of the speech, it should be someone else to initiate this probe, not someone who has an obvious vested interest. Delikadesa ba ho? Kapag tinagalog mo yung conflict of interest, konting delikadesa. Eh bakit mo imbisigahan yung bagay na makikinabang ka? Diba? Wag naman po, because it will destroy the credibility of the institution itself. Pwede naman mag-participate, wag ka na sigurong mag-preside, i-give up mo na yung pagiging presiding officer dun sa komite kung may konting delikadesa. Pero syempre, alam naman natin dito sa Pilipinas, maraming mga kakapalang mukha.
Ako masabi.
Di ba naman? Oo. 24 sila dyan, bakit siya pa kailangan mag-head niyan? Eh siya lang ang may conflict of interest sa ABS-CBN.
She can always say that she holds that committee in the Senate.
Kaya nga, delicadeza says, she should pass it on to the vice chairman. Kaya nga may vice chairman.
Okay.
Diba?
So, yeah.
Nagsisimula na pala po tayo sa second episode ng PAIRfect.
So sa BFA, how do you see the actions of the president right now?
Ay, tama naman po. Alam mo, matagal na naman naniniwala si Presidente na talagang hindi sa interes ng Pilipinas yung VFA. Nung nagbago po ako, nagkausap ko ng Presidente, alam mo, talagang sabi ko, ako po yung abogado ni Joey Salonga laban sa VFA. At syempre po, pagkapareho tayong pananaw. Pero sabi ko kasi, kung mag-aaral kayo ng kasaysayan, lahat ng mga tumututol sa talagang mga vital interest ng Amerika, kinukutita ng Amerika o ina-assassinate. Kaya sabi ko, siguro wag muna natin galawin kasi sa akin, mas mabuti na matapos nyo yung termine nyo para makinabang ang taong bayan. So hulihin na lang natin yan on the 5th year siguro, on the 6th year. Kaya nga lang, talagang napika na si Presidente dahil nangyari doon kay Senator Bato. Pero lilinawin ko po, dati na pong tutol si Presidente dito sa VFA at lahat itong mga tratado na talaga namang lumalabag sa soberenya ng taong bayan. Ano ba ho yung mga grounds namin nung panahon ni Jovi Salonga na hinaing ko yung petition? Kasi dalawa po kasi yung provision sa saligang batas tungkol sa tratado. One is a general provision. No treaty shall become valid and binding unless concurred in by 2/3 vote of the Senate. That's the general rule for all treaties. But there is a special requirement if the agreement is about the deployment of foreign soldiers and bases in the Philippines, which does not have to be permanent, even temporary. It must be in the form of a treaty and duly recognized by the other contracting party as such. Ang ibig sabihin po niyan, kung sa Pilipinas ang tratado kinakailangan ng concurrence ng Philippine Senate, kailangan in the case of the United States, yung US Senate will also concur in it, no? Tapos, natalo kami dyan. Although partial victory kasi napabaliwalang visa namin yung Romulo Kearney Agreement kung saan sinasabi na nila yung Pemberton ikukulong daw sa US Embassy. Sabi ng Supreme Court, mali yan, kinakailangan magkaroon ng bagong kasunduan, kinakailangan ikulong siya sa Philippine jurisdiction. So, partial victory, pero doon sa Constitution natin, natalo kami. Bakit? Anong sabi ng Supreme Court? Sabi niya, ang VFA daw is a mere implementing agreement to a treaty which is the Mutual Defense Pact. So, ibig sabihin niyan, why will the Senate now complain na kailangan ng concurrence nila? Hindi naman siya yung treaty. Siya yung only implementing agreement to the treaty, which is MDT. At hindi pa naman tayo kumakala sa MDT. Pero sa akin, even if it were a treaty, sabi kasi na sa Ligang Batas, the Senate concurrence is only required in order that a treaty may become valid and binding. In order for it to become a domestic law. Hindi naman sinabi na in withdrawing from a treaty, kinakailangan din ng concurrence. They're arguing na like in lawmaking process, kapag riniripil ang batas, kinakailangan Kongreso rin ang magko-concur. Pero a treaty, although it has the effect of law, is not a law enacted by Congress. In fact, kaya nga Senate lang nagko-concur, hindi naman kasama ang House eh. O di ba? If it were to be total legislation, dapat kasama ang House sa concurrence. Hindi eh. So it's just parang an institutional safeguard that the policymakers will not object to the provisions of a treaty. But there is no requirement that they concur when the President, in his capacity as Chief Architect of Foreign Policy, decides that it is against the interest already of the Philippines to remain in a treaty. Pati nga yung MDT, dapat pag-aralan na kung dapat tayong kumalis na dyan eh. Kasi 1951 pa yan. Iba yung factual setting. Meron pang Cold War noon. Sa pula sa puti. Wala na namang Cold War ngayon.
So it hasn't been looked at since then?
It hasn't been looked at since. No? Kaya nga ako, yan yung dapat na ring repasuhin, i-review. Pero tingin ko nag-iingat din si Presidente dahil baka nga ikudita siya. Dahil alam naman natin, maraming mga kakampi, mga bagong makapili nakakampi sa Amerika para patalsikin ng Presidente natin. No? Matuto na po tayo sa kasaysayan. Kasi yung mga makapili ng mga panahon ng Kastila, panahon ng mga Amerikano, panahon ng Apapapon, sila pa rin yung mga ninuno ng mga ilang namumuno ngayon. Nasa oposisyon. Yung isa pa nga dyan, ninakaw yung pera ng katipunan. O, ngayon, nagpapasasa sa kayamanan nila. O, di ba makapili yan? Magnanakaw nga eh, hindi nga lang makapili eh. No?
Yung termination ng BFA, so, I just want a more definite idea about what will happen to EDCA and the MDT.
Well, hindi naman kasi tayo bumitiw dun sa dalawa. Although EDCA is also not a treaty. Kasi ako rin ang counsel naman ni Bobby Tanyada in questioning EDCA. Ang sabi naman ng Supreme Court, it is also implementing the MDT again. In fact, sabi nila, it's almost the same as the MDT. So, but it's not really a treaty. It's just an agreement as well. Pero ang importansya ng VFA, it is the VFA that enables them to come here and conduct war exercises, quote-unquote. Although, habang nandiyan ang EDCA, pwede pa rin silang mag-preposition ng soldiers and ng weapons.
So double-double na.
So double-double. Except that, you don't see as many soldiers here, American soldiers, kasi wala ng regular exercises. No? Napakadami pala ng exercises na kinukunda. Kaya nga sabi ko sa Supreme Court, yung nag-argue kami, alam mo, number one, the Constitution does not require its permanent basing. Temporary, no? Pero this is for all intents and purposes, permanent. Kasi there's no end to the war games. So there's no end to the presence of American servicemen. And dati, limited lang sila dun sa lugar where they were paying rent. Ngayon, meron ng sundalo sa Zamboanga. Meron ng American soldiers in Palawan. Meron ng American soldiers in Sulu. Meron sa Tarlac. Dati at least Clark, Subic, at saka Sangley Point lang, di ba?
Ngayon.
So yung temporary basing, yung rotational presence, pwede pa rin kasi meron pa rin EDCA.
Oo nga, pero yung temporary na yun is a misnomer because the temporary, because they're always there, is permanent.
Tawa.
So it's a one way of circumventing the constitutional provision that the basing of foreign troops and military facilities cannot be except through a treaty duly concurred in by the other contracting party as such. Kaya nga yung decision ng Supreme Court sa EDCA, parang they said that's the MDT because the MDT was actually recognized by the other contracting party as such. So with that decision, the remedy is let's revisit MDT
Yes.
and withdraw from it once and for all.
Who can do that?
Well, the president.
Siya talaga.
The president can do it. And you know, although it is a formal treaty, it is still my assertion that the Constitution is silent on whether or not Senate concurrence is required for purposes of withdrawal, and therefore, it is not required. Because if it were, then the Constitution should have specified. Mali yung argument nila na because lawmaking involves also an act of Congress, then an act of Congress is required. Kung talagang lawmaking yan, ba't wala kang House? Diba?
Yeah.
So yung review would also need the presence of the American officials.
I think the review is to determine if it is
MDT.
if the MDT continues to serve the Philippine national interest, which clearly it does not. Kasi nga kita mo, supposedly that's collective security. Pag nangangailangan tayo, re-rest back ang Amerika, 2 beses na tayo nawala ng isla sa South China Sea, Mischief Reef at Panatag. Bakit? Sumaklolo ba si Uncle Sam? Sabi lang niya, wala kaming kinalaman dyan sa pinag-aagawang teritoryo sa West Philippine Sea. In the first place, hindi nila kinikilala yung titulo natin. Dahil mula noong 1950 na kung saan na si Thomas Cloma claims Spratlys, hindi naman nila kinikilala yan kasi hindi daw kasama sa Treaty of Paris kung saan binilin nila tayo sa Espanya. Bakit sila makikialam? Kung yun ang pinakamalaking banta sa ating seguridad na hindi naman ako nag-agree kasi hindi ko kinikilalang banta ang China, para pa na magkakaroon ka ng collective security agreement, di ba? Sa collective security agreement, yun yung mga panahon ng pula sa puti. Ngayon talagang war or the waging of war is really considered a crime. This is the first time, well, since World War II, of course, the Nazis were convicted of the crime of aggression. But ngayon talaga malinaw sa Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court na na-codify na talaga siya na the waging of war is an international crime. So bakit kinakailangan natin ng isang collective security? Alam natin pinagbabawal na yan at pwede pang makulong ang mga liderato ng mga bansa na mananakop sa ibang mga bayan.
Very interesting.
Yeah, it's so interesting, but we don't have enough time.
Next time it will be 1 hour.
Yes. Well, we have a lot more to ask you, Sana, but our show is only 30 minutes.
Next time it will be 1 hour.
Yes.
And more.
We hope you enjoyed our talk with attorney Harry Roque. Join us again next week on PAIRfect.
See you po. Bye-bye. Especially to my Facebook viewers. Have a good Facebook party. Watch party.